Thank you, Goof. Thank you for your kind invitation to speak. And it's an honor to share some thoughts in a forum of learned colleagues and co-workers across the world, and friends, and I hope some new friends that we can engage in this session. IUHPE is very delighted to be part of this initiative. Good evening from New Zealand, and good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Or as we say here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Or in my first language, Tongan language, maloi laumari ho eiki, te malere ai tonga kotoa. So I'd like to, if possible, to share my PowerPoint. Thank you, Prof. And as always, it takes a little bit of time to load these things. Bear with me. And it has jumped 4 slides ahead of me. I hope you can see my slide on the screen clearly.
It's perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. You'll be very pleased to know that I have only 2 major points to talk about in this topic that I came up with towards a new paradigm of unity and diversity, building resilience as a one human family. And the first point is that I'd like to discuss building resilience at the community level. And I'll put forward at least 2 or 3 models from this part of the world, from the Pacific region, for us to briefly look at. So my second point will be to discuss resilience as a global community. And I'll do that from a scientific and indigenous planetary health perspective. And as you know, these 2 topics are closely related. And so in the Pacific region, there are some 20 plus small island nations. And there's also Australia as a continent, and of course, New Zealand. And 2 of the major forces affecting our part of the world, one is a natural reality, and that is Mother Nature. The other one is a social reality. It is a human construct, globalization or neo-colonization. And today, these 2 are blurred and have entwined and became one because of human actions, and they are human constructs. And as you know, it's very challenging to build community resilience in this part of the world, not only because of the power of Mother Nature, but also we are small island nations. We are autonomous, but we are autonomous parts of our global community. What happens at a global level affects directly the local level as well. And this means that we have to use both downstream and upstream approaches, from the local to the global. And because of the dominant political economic systems here in this part of the world, it means that natural resources are being exhausted beyond the capacity of Mother Nature, especially in the small island nations. At the same time, you see a trend of looking more and more to indigenous knowledge systems to complement the non-traditional methods that were introduced in the last 100 years. And the aim, of course, is to sustain both human and environmental well-being. And the look and the move towards indigenous knowledge is because it's a more comprehensive, holistic understanding of well-being. Not only it's natural to the indigenous communities in this part of the world, but it embraces well-being in a broader sense than just the physical, mental, and economic. It's also ecological and spiritual. So the three indigenous models that I'd like to us to look at in this session. But firstly, as you know, at a family level and a community level, families in all cultures of the world, the family is the building block of society and the community. It is the most important unit. It is the carrier of culture, the first house of learning, first house of health and well-being, and of material and spiritual prosperity. And when you expand a cluster of families, you find a community. And families usually build their well-being on past wisdom and knowledge. Their well-being is also enhanced by their present knowledge, and they are inspired by the hope for a better future, which they see in the eyes, of their children and grandchildren. There are also potentials to scale up some of these models, and I am going to touch on them very briefly. I have put in the references some of the links that you can access and read more, the literature on these models. So the three of them, Te Whare Tapawha, the house with four sides, Whanauwara is family, holistic well-being, and Whanauwara, healthy people, healthy environment, or healthy planet. And these three are built on the indigenous concept and natural reality that humanity is inextricably one with Mother Nature. It is strengths-based. It's about empowering family to address the current challenges, whether it's nature, whether it's a human construct. It's focused on the future, but it's also about the family leading its own destiny, its own pathway, and making its own decision. And it's about holistic health and holistic well-being. So to the left is Whanauwara. As you can see, it's driven by the family or the whanau. It's controlled by the whanau. It's about leading their own pathway to well-being. And it's not only for the well-being of the whanau, but it's also on the higher level of the group, of the hapu, or the cluster of extended families, and then the whole tribe itself. This initiative of Whanauwara, not only a framework, but also it is now a policy. It is now an initiative funded by government. It has been running here in Aotearoa, New Zealand for some more than 10 years, and its efficacy, being proved. Moving on to my right, you have Te Whare Tapawha model. It's the multidimensional aspects of well-being, starting with the physical well-being, the mental and emotional well-being. There's also the spiritual dimension of health and well-being, and of course, the collective aspect, the collective dimension of well-being or social well-being. So it's not only about the well-being of the individual, it's also about the well-being of the whole group. Again, this is a quick overview. In the reference, you can read a lot more about these models. There is also Whanauwara, translated into healthy people, healthy planet. Again, like the other two indigenous models, they are family-led, they are family-owned, very multi-dimensional. There are 6 dimensions here, from spiritual well-being to mental and physical, as well as socio-economic. There's also cultural well-being, family values, languages, and so on and so forth. And equally, if not more important, the well-being of Mother Nature. Pitch, especially for the family and the community level, but Whanauwara can be applied at all 5 levels, from the individual, family, local, national, and global level as well. I guess the phenomenon that I'm talking here about is the emergence and the coming together of diverse knowledge systems, the knowledge of the East, the West, the North, and the South, of course. You see science coming together with indigenous knowledge. There's still a space for debating. There's the role of spirituality. As you know, the Secretary General refers to planetary health, the well-being of the planet, not only as a major policy test, but it's also a moral, ethical test. So you see knowledge systems coming together to inform our search for new solutions to the many challenges that we face, both at the global level and the local level as well. Here in Aotearoa, we have advanced to some new levels. The recognition of the rights of Mother Nature, the Whenua or the Whanauwara, Mother Nature. Some parts of the country are being named for the past few years as legal persons under the, in the eyes of the law. For example, there's the Whanauwara, used to be a national park, a national reserve. It is now not owned by anyone. It owns itself. The same applies for the Whanganui River. It is a legal person following the first recognition of the Whanauwara in 2014. But as you know, it is not enough to work only downstream and to work at the local level only. We must move forward and move up as well. We must elevate our consciousness to the planetary level. As stated in the Geneva Charter for Wellbeing, the world faces complex and interrelated crises. At the same time, it calls for the building of well-being communities around the world and a centering of indigenous knowledge and leadership. A similar call was made by the Secretary General 2020. He mentions that the planet is broken and it's a suicidal pathway for humanity. And it's timely that we should heed and we look to indigenous knowledge and leadership. He points out that the defining task of the 21st century is making peace with nature. We can add to that. We think we need to make peace first with our fellow human beings. Ukraine is not the only flashpoint in the world. There's Yemen, there's Syria, there's Afghanistan, and there are some parts of the Pacific that needs peace and well-being as well. And so we need to rise above the level where the problems have been created and are still being created. We need to look at new outcomes and to elevate our consciousness from the village and the nation to the planetary level. We must expand, not only elevate our consciousness, but we must expand our understanding to encompass, as I mentioned before, to encompass and embrace again the environmental and spiritual dimensions of well-being, as mentioned in the Geneva Charter for Well-being, and first mentioned earlier in the 2005 Bangkok Charter of the World Health Organization. We need to include knowledge of other cultures. They can bring new solutions to our effort to find collective solutions. And as you know, our global challenges are human constructs, and therefore we can deconstruct and we can reconstruct them again for our well-being as one human family. We need also to expand our horizon, to understand well-being, to include environmental and spiritual well-being, as I mentioned earlier. Let me move quickly. I'm conscious of my time. We need to look at our current set of values that we apply at the local as well as the global level. And based on science, spirituality, and indigenous knowledge, we can draw on inclusive principles like reciprocity, unity in diversity, love and kindness, collaboration and solidarity. As you know, no single state, no single nation today can solve the converging global challenges that we are facing as humanity. We must collaborate in solidarity. We must work together. And by the way, we only have one planet, and it's not very healthy. So moving towards a new paradigm, a paradigm of one people, one health, and within our unity in diversity, that we move beyond a culture of competition to a culture of cooperation, a culture of complementarity. And as we have witnessed over the last decade or so, the call by many international organizations, many institutions like the UN Sustainable Development Goals 2015, the IUHBE legacy statements, the Sao Paulo Declaration last year, the Geneva Charter that I mentioned that came out last December, and of course the latest from IUHBE in its conference held last month. These are all statements that call on a rise on our consciousness and to elevate our understanding to a level of collaboration at all levels, from the global down to the local. And as the Secretary General said, as I mentioned earlier, making peace with nature is the vital task for humanity these days. What we can add on to that is that you may recall that the first determinant of health, or the first prerequisite mentioned in the Ottawa Charter, 1986, is peace. And I don't know about you, but for me and my grandchildren, like most grandchildren in the world, we need peace. Peace is the first determinant of health, and also as echoed by the Geneva Charter, is what the world needs now. As Gandhi says, once said, an eye for an eye makes the world, go blind. So if we try to sum up these ideas, firstly, we need to elevate our consciousness. Secondly, we need to expand our understanding. We were once there before. We once embraced the ecological, the environmental dimension of well-being, as well as the spiritual dimension. We need to revisit those. We need to reset and apply new principles and values: justice, collective good, unity in diversity, and respect among humans, as well as respect for Mother Nature. We need to rebuild and remold our human systems as called for by all the charters that I mentioned before, both our political, our social, our cultural, economic systems, and make sure that they are ethically, environmentally, and economically sustainable. In the field of education, there can be new research and teaching. A new paradigm of one planet is about unity in diversity, not just bio and cultural diversity, but a move to the next level from cultural diversity to unity in diversity. And for community health workers, both the workforce and the sector, we can participate in co-leading and engaging for a societal movement that is multidisciplinary, multi-level, and multi-sectorial. And in that way, we can contribute to building resilience at both the local and the global level. And we need to elevate, as I mentioned before, our consciousness to one of a global human system, like the parts of one human body. Communities and nations must see the next level of unity. It's world governance in a collective democratic way. embracing our diversity as our strength as well as our reality. You know, and as Guterres once said some 2.5 years ago, it's the time for humanity to transform its relationship, not only with Mother Nature, but with each other. And we do that with solidarity, and we must work together. And these principles and concepts are reflected in the wisdom of indigenous knowledge and other systems of knowledge that we can observe around the world today. So in summary, what I'm suggesting that we elevate our consciousness, transform our collective effort into a new paradigm with a new set of values. It's about working together and work at a level where we create solutions rather than continuing to work at the level where we continue to use the same old methods which produce the same outcomes and nothing new. And with those few words, Prof, I think I've used my time. I'll hand it back to you to see if there are questions from participants. Sorry for my coarse voice tonight. It has been a long day and it's towards the end of my long work hour today, but happy to answer some questions. Thank you.
Okay.